A gorgeous young Michigan mother, Lynette Hooker, falls overboard in the Bahamas.
Why would she not be wearing a personal flotation device or a life vest out in the open ocean?
According to her husband, who managed to paddle ashore to safety.
There were 2 life jackets at the bottom of that dinghy when it washed ashore at Marsh Harbor. 2 life jackets in the boat, while Brian Hooker's wife, who he says had just fallen overboard into dark, churning water, was out there in the Bahamas night, alone. He didn't put one on and jump in after her. He didn't tie the dinghy to his ankle and swim. He didn't throw the anchor down to hold position. He just drifted for 9 hours. And he didn't fire a flare. He didn't call for help until 4 o'clock in the morning. Lynette Hooker has been missing for 19 days. The U.S. Coast Guard has opened a criminal investigation. Her husband has been arrested, questioned, and released, and not a single trace of her has been found. This is the complete timeline of what happened. Every confirmed fact, every contradiction, every detail that doesn't add up. And by the end of it, you are going to have questions. A lot of them. But before we get into that timeline, you need to understand who Lynette Hooker is. Because this is not just a case file. This is a person. Lynette Hooker was 55 years old. And if you spend even 5 minutes scrolling her Instagram, The Sailing Hookers, you get a picture of someone who had finally found exactly where she was supposed to be. She grew up in Lenawee County, Michigan. Settled life, settled road, but in 2023, she and her husband Brian bought a 6-foot catch sailboat, and they named it Soulmate. And then they left Louisiana, Florida, the Bahamas. She cooked in a solar oven on deck, baked cinnamon rolls in the middle of the ocean, filmed herself snorkeling eye level with manatees. She wrote on Instagram, "Living our best life." And you believe her. The light in every video catches her in motion, wind in her hair, sun on her shoulders, laughter carried off before it fully lands. Her daughter, Carly Aylesworth, described her mother as very fit and strong, a good swimmer, someone who loved exploring, who had always dreamed of sailing the Bahamas, and who had finally done it. That post went up on March 3rd, 2026, just 1 month before she vanished. And that's what makes April 4th so impossible to understand, because nothing about Lynette Hooker's life suggested she was in danger. Nothing suggested she would simply disappear. Let's start with what we know for certain. The day before Lynette vanishes, the Hooker's sailboat Soulmate shows up on surveillance at the Firefly Inn on Elbow Cay. Around 1:30 inches the afternoon, they drop anchor out front. They stay on board. They sleep on the boat that night. This is important because Brian Hooker would later tell his friend Blaine Stevenson that he, quote, doesn't really understand the currents and the tides in this area. But here's the thing, to sleep on a keelboat with its keel dragging through the shallows of the Sea of Abaco, you have to know the tides. You cannot drop anchor and go to bed if you don't know the tides. You'd wake up tipped over on the bottom. Investigative reporter Ashleigh Banfield, who spent 5 days in the Bahamas retracing the events, confirmed this Brian Hooker has been in this area for at least 5 weeks. He bragged to locals that he hadn't tied up to a dock in years. He knows the tides. But that recorded phone call with his friend will become one of the most disturbing pieces of this puzzle. We'll get there. First Friday night becomes Saturday morning. The next morning, around 11 a.m., Soulmate pulls up anchor and moves less than a quarter mile south along the leeward shore of Elbow Cay. Brian and Lynette re-anchor just off the Abaco Inn. They plan to go ashore, have some drinks, enjoy the day. This is a routine that experienced liveaboards know well. You anchor your big boat in the protected water on the western, leeward side of the island calm, sheltered from the Atlantic trade winds screaming over the other side, and you take your little dinghy tender ashore. The Hookers have been doing exactly this for years. For a few hours, everything looks normal, but the last known images of that afternoon tell a story that Brian Hooker's account cannot explain. At some point, between 4:30 and 7 p.m., Brian and Lynette are at the Abaco Inn. They're having drinks. The bartender at the Abaco Inn, later confirmed by the New York Post, says Brian paid cash, no credit card, cash. Remember that detail. And then, at 6:34 p.m., a photograph is taken. It's the last confirmed image of Lynette Hooker alive. She's at the pool, on the eastern, Atlantic-facing side of the inn. She's wearing her green cover-up. Her arms are crossed. She looks a little cold, because the Atlantic wind is blowing straight at that shore. Her green dry bag appears to be on the ground beside her sun chair. 6:34 p.m. That is your last confirmed photograph of Lynette Hooker. And now, the timeline gets complicated. Because what happened in the next 26 minutes before the next photograph emerges is something that Brian Hooker cannot fully account for. On April 21st, investigative reporter Ashleigh Banfield revealed an exclusive photograph that changes the timeline. A woman who was upstairs in the Abaco Inn bar wanted to capture the sunset. So, she took a photo. A live photo, the kind that moves for a second and a half. She had no idea what she was actually capturing. The photo is timestamped 7 p.m. exactly, and when you zoom in, you can see a figure crossing the road, heading toward the path that leads down to the dinghy dock. A 30-second walk to where the tender is tied up. That figure appears to be Brian Hooker. And here is what stops everyone cold. Lynette is not with him. Now, before we convict anyone in the court of public opinion, there are innocent explanations. Maybe she went back to use the restroom. Maybe she said, "Go ahead, I'll meet you at the dock." Maybe she was steps behind him and not in the frame. We don't know. But here is what we do know. Brian Hooker told investigators that he and Lynette left the Abaco Inn around 7:30. This photo says he was heading to that dock at 7. That is a 30-minute gap he has not explained. And there is something else in that photo that Banfield flagged immediately. Brian is carrying a yellow dry bag, bright banana yellow. But Lynette, in every Instagram video, in the Key West footage, in the Bahamas videos, Lynette always had a lime green dry bag, always. And in the 6:34 p.m. pool photo, something lime green on the ground beside her chair, her bag, at the pool, not with Brian, at 7 p.m. And then, at the Firefly Inn just up the shore, their surveillance cameras were rolling. And what they captured at 7:15 p.m. directly contradicts Brian Hooker's account of what the water was like that night. Brian Hooker told investigators and told his friend Blaine Stevenson on a recorded call that the water was 2 to 4 foot seas, screaming wind, rough conditions. The kind of night when waves could bounce someone out of a dinghy. The Firefly Inn's surveillance camera was pointed at those same waters at 7:15 p.m. on April 4th. Ashleigh Banfield obtained that footage. And what's on it is not screaming seas. The water is calm. A boat going out doesn't even have side spray. It's gliding through what Banfield described as bathwater. At 7:30 p.m., the owner of the Firefly Inn pointed Banfield to flags on camera, not rigid at attention, fluttering, dropping, fluttering again. The owner said, "That is not 20 knots. That is not 18 knots. That is not a screamer." And Banfield, who spent 5 days on that island, measured the light every evening. At 7:30 p.m., it is still light. At 7:45, still light. At 8 p.m., it goes dark, and it goes dark fast, in about 15 minutes. But before 8, you can see. Brian said it got too dark to see her. The sun says otherwise. So we have a 7 p.m. photo of Brian, apparently alone, heading to the dock. Calm water at 7 to 15, mild wind at 7:30, and a 9-hour gap before anyone calls for help. What happened in between? Here is what Brian Hooker says happened. He says he and Lynette left the Abaco Inn at around 7:30 p.m. in their 8-foot hard-bottom dinghy with a small 2 to 4 horsepower outboard engine. They came out of White Sound Channel, turned left, and headed south down the leeward shore of Elbow Cay toward Soulmate, anchored about 10 to 15 minutes away. He says the seas were rough, 2 to 4 feet. The wind was high. It was getting dark. Lynette was sitting on a cushion on the hull. She bounced off the back. She was wearing the safety lanyard, the ignition key, on a cord around her wrist, the kind that kills the engine if you fall overboard. So when she went in, the engine cut out. He says he threw her a flotation cushion, one of 2 they had in the boat, which they sat on. He says the wind and current drove them further apart. He called out to her. He could see her swimming toward shore, he says, and then he lost sight of her. Without power, he says, he tried to paddle, but couldn't make headway against the wind. He drifted. He drifted through the Sea of Abaco for 9 hours until he reached Marsh Harbor boatyards on the mainland. He walked through the bush to a phone, and at approximately 4 a.m., he called police. Now, let's look at what was in that dinghy when it washed up. And it's the recorded phone call with his friend Blaine Stevenson that reveals a pattern of behavior that seasoned investigators find deeply suspicious. Blaine Stevenson, a friend of both Brian and Lynette, received a call from Brian in the days after Lynette disappeared. Stevenson needed to know one thing: where were they coming from, and where were they going when Lynette fell in? Simple question, clear answer, needed for a grid search. No, what Brian gave him instead was what Banfield called, and I'm going to use her word, a mismatch of junk. He started talking about Great Guana Cay, a trip from 2 days before. He brought up Tahiti Beach. He started talking about not having been tied to a dock in years. He told Blaine he, quote, doesn't really understand the currents and the tides in this area. But remember, this man slept on a keelboat in the shallow Sea of Abaco the night before Lynette disappeared. You do not sleep on a keelboat without knowing the tides. You have been here 5 weeks. You know the tides. And yet, with his wife still missing, Brian Hooker tells his friend, I don't really understand the currents here. Stevenson, trying to help, eventually recorded the call because so much information was flying at him. He published it after Brian was arrested because Brian could no longer speak for himself. Investigators have heard it. And then there's what Carly Aylesworth says happened behind closed doors. Carly Aylesworth is 28. Brian Hooker has been in her life since she was very young. He is her stepfather. And when her mother went missing, Carly got on a plane to the Bahamas. She has not stopped fighting since. She told ABC News she doubted Brian's story from the very beginning. She says she does not understand how her mother, a strong swimmer, a fit woman, someone who had been on the water for over a decade, just drowned in the Sea of Abaco. It does not make sense to her. The timeline does not make sense to her. And she revealed something else. Carly says there is a documented history of domestic violence in the relationship, physical abuse, strangulation. She says Brian had, on more than one occasion, threatened to throw Lynette overboard. And now Lynette had apparently fallen off a boat. She also revealed this. Lynette had been planning to leave him. She had purchased a one-way ticket home to Michigan. She was done. And there is a 2015 domestic violence incident on record. Police responded to the Hooker home in Michigan. Brian had blood from his nose, said Lynette, came at him. Lynette was arrested that night and spent the night in jail. Nothing came of the case, but the record exists. Brian Hooker's attorney categorically denied all of Carly's allegations, saying her client is heartbroken and deeply distressed. On April 8th, the Royal Bahamas Police Force made a move. Bahamian authorities took Brian Hooker into custody for questioning. Assistant Commissioner Eduardo Dames told Reuters the detention was based on his words, some probable cause. No charges were announced. His attorney called it a witness interview. She said he was cooperating. Under Bahamian law, a magistrate can authorize up to 72 additional hours of detention if investigators need more time to gather or preserve evidence. That extension was granted. Brian Hooker sat in custody while cadaver dogs from the U.S. Coast Guard were brought to Elbow Cay. On April 13th, 6 days after his arrest, Brian Hooker walked out of Central Police Station just after 8 p.m., released, no charges. His attorney said it was a very emotional time for him. And then Brian Hooker said something that seemed, on its face, reassuring. After his release, Brian Hooker gave a round of media interviews. He told NBC that no one had told him to stop looking, and he wasn't going to stop. He told CBS he believed people had survived overboard in the Bahamas for days, even weeks. He said the search area was vast, so many islands, so many possibilities. He told ABC, "My sole focus is finding Lynette." He said he had canceled everything they were going home for. He was going to renew his visa and stay in the Bahamas until he got his wife back. One day later, April 15th, his attorney confirmed to ABC News that Brian Hooker had left the Bahamas. His mother was unwell, she said. The Royal Bahamas Defense Force confirmed the search was still active. Cadaver dogs swept the coastline, drone surveillance, submersible drone operations, shoreline patrols. Nothing. Carly Aylesworth flew to the Bahamas herself. She met with the Coast Guard. She met with Bahamian authorities. She walked the path her mother walked. She wants answers. She is actively lobbying lawmakers to keep the search alive and to bring more attention to this case. The Abaco Inn surveillance footage, which would show exactly what time Brian and Lynette left the dock, what they were wearing, and whether Lynette got in that dinghy at all, remains under lock and key. The Royal Bahamas Police Force has ordered the general manager not to release it. Banfield has tried every avenue, not released. And on April 21st, Ashleigh Banfield released the exclusive 7 p.m. sunset photograph, the one showing a figure she believes to be Brian, alone, heading toward the dock. The one with the yellow dry bag. The one that makes the timeline even harder to reconcile. And so, here is where we are right now. And here is the one question that this entire case turns on. So, here is where we are right now, today. It has been 19 days since anyone has seen Lynette Hooker. The U.S. Coast Guard has an open criminal investigation. The Royal Bahamas Police Force is still actively searching. Brian Hooker has returned to Michigan, and Lynette has not been found. Here is what we know for certain. Lynette was photographed alive at 6:34 p.m. on April 4th. A figure believed to be Brian was photographed alone at 7 p.m. heading toward the dock. Firefly Inn footage shows calm water at 7:15. 2 life jackets were found in the dinghy. Brian took 9 hours to report Lynette missing. Lynette had purchased a one-way ticket home. Brian has been arrested, questioned, and released without charges. Here is what we do not know. We do not know whether Lynette actually got into that dinghy. We do not know what happened between 7 p.m. and 4 a.m. We do not know what is on the Abaco Inn surveillance footage, the footage that authorities have sealed. We do not know where Lynette is. And we do not know why, if the water was as rough as Brian claimed. Both life jackets stayed in the boat. If there is one question that defines this entire case, it is this. Where is Lynette Hooker? And did she ever get into that dinghy at all? Carly Aylesworth said something recently that I keep coming back to. She said, "I have been privy to very little information. My sole concern is to find out what happened to my mother and make sure a full and complete investigation is performed." That statement is the whole story, really. A 8-year-old daughter who flew to a foreign country, met with investigators, retraced her mother's final known moments, and keeps showing up every single day. She's calling lawmakers. She's talking to the media. She's refusing to let this become just another missing person case that fades from the headlines. Lynette's mother, Darlene, is going through this too. A grandmother who just wants to know what happened to her daughter. The sailing community people who live on boats, who know exactly what it takes to anchor in the Sea of Abaco, who understand the tides and the weather and the gear, they have been among the most vocal voices saying something doesn't add up. These are people who have spent their lives on the water. They know what Brian's account should have looked like if it was true, and they have questions. Behind every timeline event, every piece of evidence, every contradiction is a woman who loved the ocean, who finally found her rhythm, who was supposed to come home. This case is far from over. Here is what I am watching for. First, the Abaco Inn surveillance footage. Authorities have sealed it. But at some point in this investigation, that footage may surface, and it may tell us, once and for all, what time Brian left that dock and whether Lynette was with him. Second, the U.S. Coast Guard criminal investigation. The CGIS does not open criminal investigations lightly. They are building a case. The question is what they have found and where it leads. Third, Carly Aylesworth has said she has not told everything she knows. She is holding information for investigators. Whatever she is sitting on, it may eventually become part of a public record. The moment any of those things break, I will have an update for you right here. Subscribe and hit that bell now so you do not miss it. And here's what I want to know from you looking at this entire timeline. What is the detail that stands out most? What is the thing you keep coming back to? Is it the 2 life jackets? The 7 p.m. photo? The 9-hour drift? The one-way ticket home? Drop it in the comments, because in cases like this, the public sometimes sees what investigators miss. If you or anyone you know has any information about the disappearance of Lynette Hooker, if you were near Elbow Cay on the evening of April 4th between 6:30 and 8 p.m., if you have photographs or video of the Abaco Inn, the water, the dinghy dock, anything, please contact the U.S. Coast Guard Investigative Service. Lynette Hooker is 55 years old. She is a white woman, medium build with dark blonde hair. She was last seen on April 4th, 2026, near Elbow Cay in the Abaco Islands, the Bahamas. She was wearing a green cover-up. She may have had a lime green dry bag. We owe Carly Aylesworth an answer. We owe Lynette's mother an answer. And we owe Lynette Hooker the truth.